I'm a current PhD student here in Raleigh, North Carolina at NC State. I was born and raised in San Diego and recently graduated with my master's in criminology from San Diego State, and I'm also formerly incarcerated. Thank you. One of the biggest problems that I've noticed is familiarity between between law enforcement and the community. It seems like a lot of law enforcement rotates a person out. They put a police officer in a community that they've never been in before and are not familiar with, and then they rotate them right out instead of the police officer getting to know the community and the community getting to know the police officer. That form of communication, that rapport is broken, you know. And if we could recruit more officers out of places like 49th and Imperial and neighborhoods like this that are normally targeted, if we could recruit more locally or keep police officers in there so that they can actually become a part of the community and become a part of the solution for everybody, and with the community leaders and the churches and whatnot, I think the communication would improve greatly in that neighborhood, because once you know the context of the neighborhood and the people in it, and once you build a rapport, then that miscommunication and those kind of problems that come along with it seem to dissipate.
Well, outstanding, detailed answer, Laura, and I want to thank you for that. I'm going to unmute you because I have a question for you. I think everything that you said was spot on, right? It's of paramount importance that people who live in a community, they're there every single day, have an understanding and a familiarity with the members of law enforcement that are there, and vice versa. What happens when you leave your community, right? Since none of us live in a vacuum, we step outside of our communities frequently. You're not going to have a relationship with law enforcement in this next town over. They're not going to know who you are. And so it's impossible for those officers and for those residents to have a familiarity with you who are visiting. And I say residents because I want to give members of law enforcement an opportunity to respond to this. A lot of times we're stopped, especially if you're on foot, because a resident called law enforcement.
Okay, I have something to return for that, though.
Okay, let's hear it. That's why I said it.
So this is good. This is a good debate right here. So the thing is if you build confidence and that officer or that citizen has confidence, you know, I have confidence and trust in a police officer. Instead of fearing the police, you know, that person can probably go to a different town or a different community, and instead of having that fear or having that animosity, can actually walk up to an officer and say, you know what, officer, I have a problem, or officer, can you help me deal with that? I feel like if you build that type of communication in one community, as an officer or as a citizen, you learn to communicate effectively and with each other. So no matter what community you go to, no matter what town you go to as either an officer or a resident, you have a friendlier reminder of what citizens are and what police are. And I think it helps a person, no matter where they go, to get along with law enforcement, or helps law enforcement understand the citizens a little better. If you have a positive memory, a positive contact with either a citizen or a police officer, that positive contact will stay with you no matter what town you go into.
I think that's an outstanding answer, Laura, so much so that it applies to any group of people, right? Any group of people. And in this country in particular, one of our biggest problems is lack of exposure. The way this country was set up, you people live here, and you people live here, and you people live here. And the lack of exposure that comes from segregation, because that's what it is the reason why people have issues with those folks, because you don't spend any time with those folks. You're not exposed to those folks all the time. And the only interaction we typically have with law enforcement is if we're being stopped by foot or if we're being pulled over. So Laura, it's a great point. If we have more positive relationships with law enforcement, generally speaking, then generally speaking, wherever we go, we'll give law enforcement the benefit of the doubt. It's a great point. I love the way you explained it. You have something else you want to say? Let me unmute you. That was a fantastic answer.
No, that was pretty much it. I couldn't agree more that if you foster a positive relationship instead of animosity, I mean, you know, I've looked at studies with small children who already can't stand the police. They have a bad view of the police. And God forbid that poor child goes into another environment and has that same contact and carries it until they're an adult, you know? So yeah, when I read those kind of studies, it breaks my heart. So that's the pattern that we need to break.